Hey there, tech fans. Rick here again with a quick review of the Meta Quest 2 VR gaming headset. And in today's video, I'll try to help you decide which version of the basic headset is right for you and your family, because there are two versions on the market, a 128 gigabyte version and a larger 256 gigabyte version, and you might be wondering, why do I need that larger version? Well, to start with, what they're referring to with the 128 gig and the 256 gig is the amount of memory inside the headset. Because remember, the headset's running an operating system and it's got storage available in there to download games, to keep your statistics, to take screenshots. All the things you do with the headset are stored in that memory. So obviously, more memory is a good thing, but of course, more memory costs more. So you want to decide, do I really need that extra space? And to start with, there used to be a 64 gig version on the market, but that's no longer available, but you can find it on the secondary market. So today, the 128 or 256 are your two options. And I have to say that just to start off with, before you even load a game, 8 gigabytes of that is taken up by what's called the operating system, which is what runs inside the headset. Now, I don't know if that's fair or not. It'd be great if they said 128 gigs of available space for games and other things, but they actually eat up 8 gigabytes of space before you ever load a game or do anything with the headset. So essentially, if you go with the 128, you've got 120 gigs of space. If you go with the 256, you've got 248 gigs of space. So you've already reduced it by 8 gigs. Now, to give you a feel for what games take up, the average game might be about 3 gigs for a really simple game. A complex game that's got a lot of graphics, a lot of motion, a lot of multiplayer activity going on could be as big as 8 gigs. So you can kind of do the math there and figure out, if I download a lot of games, I'm going to eat up a lot of that space. And you can do the math and figure out how many games you can fit in there. But it gets a little bit more complicated because you want to consider other things that are going on. For example, when you're downloading games, the family's going to decide what they want. Well, if you have a big family, you could have 5 or 6 people that are using the headset. I promise you, they're all going to want different games. So now you've got to divide it by 5 to give everybody their little bit of space, so that, you know, your son's got one, your daughter's got one, your husband's got one, your wife's got one, and maybe you've got a third kid and he's got one. And that really cuts down on the space as well, because you're all sharing that space. So again, bigger family, probably the bigger memory. The other thing that affects that too is if you're doing screen captures. So if you're in your game and you're recording some footage because maybe you're online on TikTok or one of the social media channels, and you've got a YouTube channel where you're showing your gameplay, as you're recording that gameplay, that's eating up space as well. If you take pictures, if you take screen caps of it, that's eating up that space. The other thing to keep in mind is that it's a cool headset, and I promise you, once you get it and you're playing with it, anytime company comes over, the first thing you're going to want to do is break out the headset, stick it on grandma's head and say, let's go fight some zombies. So you're going to have games in there that maybe you don't play regularly that you'll want to have on the headset just for when company comes over. Maybe it's the one where you're slicing fruit in the air, or you're chasing, you're walking out over a plank over a city someplace just to show them how good VR really is. So in addition to the games you're playing, you've got other games that you're going to want to keep on the headset, again, for when company shows up. Another thing to consider is you might be thinking, okay, Rick, well, 256 gigs, that seems like a lot of space. I probably can get by with the 128 gig, and all I'll do is just delete games. And that's not a problem. You can definitely delete games and free up that space. You can download them again when you want to play them later on. The challenge is, when you delete a game, you lose all your statistics. So if you've saved a place in the game and you delete it, guess where you start? That's right, right on the first square, right from step one. So that can be a little tricky, and you got to know that going in. It'd be great if you could store those off to something else, maybe a memory card or the cloud, but you can't. So that's another consideration, that if you're thinking, well, Dad wants to download that VR experience where I go to the pyramids in Egypt and there's not enough space, so I'm gonna delete one of the games that my son's got on there. When he gets on the game later and downloads it and realizes you've deleted all of his statistics, that can get pretty interesting. So just keep that in mind. So for me, it's a tricky question, because the honest answer is it depends on how you're using the headset. My recommendation would always be to go for the 256 gigs, but it depends on your budget. I mean, if you want to play the game, the 128 gig version is going to be a much more cost-effective solution for your family. It plays exactly the same games, the same experience completely, same handles. Everything is exactly the same, except for the fact that you've got limited memory in the headset, which will limit how many games you can download simultaneously, how much screen recording you can do, how many pictures you can take, and how many games you can keep parked away for when grandma shows up. The 256 gig version will probably take care of all the games you'll want to play. You'll have plenty of extra space for those games that you tuck away for family and friends when they visit, and you'll have plenty of space to record screen captures and do pictures and things like that. So completely up to you which you go with, but I think that decision really comes down to how big the family is, how active you are with the equipment, and how many games you really want to download on the product. So hopefully you found this review helpful. I've enjoyed enjoyed talking about it. I love this VR headset. We play with it almost every night. It's a phenomenal product, and I think you're going to like it as well. And in a lot of ways, it's your first entree into the world of VR, and it really does a great job of bringing you into that immersive experience, whether you're traveling to Egypt to look at the pyramids, or you're going to the movies, or you're playing games. Anything you want to do, you can do inside that virtual environment. And the Meta Quest 2 is a phenomenal product for that. So thanks again for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the review. And until next time, as always, stay nerdy.